Welcome, folks, to another podcast for building high performance teams. Today, I'm delighted to have Jean O'Donnell here, who is People Enablement and Communications Manager for AIB Bank. It's lovely to have you here, Jean. How are you doing today?
Very good, Darragh. Thanks very much.
Jean, I know you and I are both at the end of a week off work, so I really appreciate you giving us some time on your time off here to do this with us as well today.
Oh, that's no problem at all. Delighted to join.
Excellent. So I'm going to jump straight in, and I'll first of all just, Jean, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself professionally and a little bit about yourself personally, anything you'd like to share as well.
Okay. God, that's a big question. So professionally, as Darren said, I work in AIB. I'm part of the AIB technology team, and I look after people enablement and communications within tech. So our tech community, we have around 500 permanent employees, and then we have a large cohort of partner and day rate contractor staff as well that are included in that. And on a day-to-day basis, my role really involves a lot of projects that look at employee engagement, the employee experience, and leadership development. So they would be the core areas of my role. I also have responsibility for overseeing communications then within technology as well. So, writing comms, we have a regular newsletter that goes out, any intermittent comms that need to go out, and then the cascade as well that would come from central resources. That's the comms part of it. I'm with the organization now over 4 years, and it's been an incredible journey to date. I have to say that I've had a huge opportunities as part of the organization, and one of the things that I would say about it is that you know everything has its ups and downs, but working with the people that I work with make it such a pleasure. My background has always been in technology, but not as a techie.
Right.
I always used to say that I could get past the first round interview. I could blag my way past a first round technical interview, but I probably lost those skills now. I started life as an IT recruiter a long time ago in Cork, actually,
Right.
and yeah. Had kind of moved through a number of different organizations, moved into startups, and then spent 6.5 years living in Central Europe, in Poland and Hungary, before moving back. And after a time with a professional services startup, then moved into AIB. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Very good, very good. And I know in your role, not only acting as a leader with the people you're working with leaders on a regular basis as well. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of smack in the middle of this it seems to be a sweet spot for your role. So it's brilliant to be talking to you more about this. Can I
Yeah.
ask you, Jim, in terms of leadership, what does leadership mean to you?
What does leadership mean to me? I suppose I'm a big believer in giving people the opportunity to do what they do best. I'm fortunate that I work very closely with our senior management team within technology, and have had the opportunity to work with a number of teams quite closely within tech. Um, and I think that the essence of being a leader is understanding where people thrive and giving them the opportunity to do that, so that like I firmly believe that if you do what you love, and it's an absolute cliche that you never come to work every day, that you never work a day in your life if you're doing what you love. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I think that from a personal perspective, I think that work has the opportunity to make people truly miserable. And that's what I spend a lot of time saying to people, that, you know, um, you don't have a suitcase full of other things that, of your personal life and your work life. And especially at the moment, given the current circumstances, everything is even more mixed up. So you
Mhm.
don't like leave a suitcase at the door of your office with all your home stuff going on, and then come in to work and do your day's work, and then pick that up again on the way out, and vice versa. So the way that you show up at work with your personal stuff going on impacts your day to day and your interpersonal relationships, and at the same time, the way that the stuff that's going on at home deeply impacts your relationships in your private life.
Yeah.
And it's really important to I suppose firstly to understand that, and then when you're looking at a team and you're looking at how a team can thrive and develop, it's about understanding, okay, well, what are the strengths that people have within the team, and how can you allow people to play to those strengths while giving them the space to develop in other areas as well.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Understanding the team and who's good at what and what people love to do,
Yeah.
key to performance there. Can I ask you, in terms of leadership itself, do you think it's in terms of a balance between intuition versus planning? Where would you see it sitting?
I suppose one of the things that I would say is that I think it really depends on the type of area that you're in. But because I mean, if you're in a very operational role, there is obviously going to be, and you have to be quite focused. You have to be very, very structured. You have to understand exactly how things are going to look in a 6 month, 12 month, 24-month period. But at
Yeah,
the same time, I'm a huge believer in creative leadership, and I suppose that would play to the idea of innovation and intuition then as well. Sometimes you don't know, but you feel it,
yeah,
and it's about looking then within the data and within the information that's available to you to back up the assumptions or the feelings that you're making. And sometimes I think you have to just trust your gut and go with it,
yeah.
because sometimes the information that you're looking for isn't in the data, or it hasn't been done before. It's not proven. But
Right.
at the same time, when you have sight of when you have sight, I suppose, of the bigger picture, you can maybe spot a gap or a sweet spot.
Right. Okay. Okay. I guess falling back on your experience as well as a leader,
Yeah.
and what you've been through before. On that, again, on leadership, do you see it's more nature or it's nurture? Is it kind of something you're born with, or can great leaders be developed and built?
Great leader, yeah. So I suppose I've just finished a master's in coaching, and it would be absolutely remiss of me to say that great leaders can't be formed.
Right.
But um, but I think that I think it's a combination of the two. If I'm honest, I think that um, you have to be willing to take a flyer sometimes and trust your gut. But at the same time, I think that good leaders. I think that good leaders. Um, I don't know, are they risk takers, are they more driven, have they got a greater level of self-confidence? There's definitely a point at which you really need to be confident in your own abilities to push you forward. And that probably comes from something intrinsic, something that you've grown up with. But at the same time, I think self-awareness and understanding yourself and your strengths, and then working to develop any areas that you may feel need to be developed can build on that. So when you're looking at leadership, I don't think it's a one size fits all thing. I don't think it's a
Yeah.
case of it's just nature or it's nurture. I think it's a combination of both. And I think that there are many types of leaders, both good and bad, in the world. And you can't just say, well, they were born that way, or that they had a fantastic coach along the way who made them that way.
Yeah, very good, very good. And I'm sure you must. It strikes me just on a comment you made earlier about coming into something that you love doing. In my own mind, I think that if you're in a leader position and it's something that you really love doing, it's probably something you could apply yourself more to, as opposed to being someone who's maybe in a leadership position and they're not quite comfortable with it. Um,
Yeah, and I think as well that you can't underestimate the impact of soft leadership. That there are people potentially sitting within your teams who are real leaders, and they're not necessarily the person who's got the biggest title or the biggest salary, or the most obvious influence. Within any team dynamic, that concept of soft leadership, how do you influence? How do you bring people with you?
yeah,
Um, it's very important, I think, when you're looking at the composition of your team and high performing teams, to understand where that lies, like who actually has the soft power.
mm,
You can spend all day every day, standing at the top of a room, banging a desk, demanding trust and demanding anything really. But like, if you take a step back and you look around and you think, okay, well, who really has the power in the room, or who really has the soft influence? I think that's a very important part of leadership as well, knowing yourself and understanding, where does the true power lie.
Wow, wow, that's really insightful stuff. That's I've heard a couple of people talk around that subject that haven't explained it quite like that, but that's really really interesting stuff. Coming into the kind of high performance bit, what do you see as the kind of key characteristics of high performing teams?
um I'm sure that you've come across the Google survey, and where they threw all of their sociologists and psychologists and everything at it to try and find the magic ingredient, um, of high performing teams, and they came up with the idea of psychological safety and the ability to fail. I suppose giving people the space to fail, and I think that's very powerful. I think that's a really important element of high performing teams personally. And I mean, I'm not going to I'm not going to dare to question, all of the time and money that Google spent on developing their theory on psychological safety and high performing teams. But actually, one of the things that I think is really really important if you're developing a high performing team is recognition and acknowledgement.
Mm.
I feel that, you know people need to feel like they're being seen and they're being heard, and that's a very important part of a team. A lot of the research will show that, um, in high performing teams, that everybody in a meeting or everybody on a call will speak an equal amount of time. So everybody has their place, and everybody gets an opportunity to air their views and to be heard. And I feel like that's a really important thing, so that, people feel like they belong.
Yeah,
And and again, like any functioning society or functioning family environment or any functioning team environment, if you know what your role is and you know what your purpose is within that, and you know that you're safe and that it's okay to make suggestions and to be creative, and also that sometimes it's okay to just put your head down and get on with the day job because you're not having a great day. I think that's at the essence of a high performing team. But the acknowledgement piece, I think, is really important as well. Like,
oh
just understanding, sometimes, sometimes it's the person who, is doing, like, they don't have to be the person who's got the best ideas or the most energy. Sometimes the most important person in the room is the person who's keeping the lights on. That's such an important part of it.
yeah.
But recognizing that and calling it out and saying thank you, I just think the power of thank you is immense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's just human nature. We all like to, no matter who we are, we all like to hear like, "Well done, that's good work."
We all
Thank
like
you.
to be
It's
appreciated, and
yeah,
it's not even a case of, like, I remember at one point working with a team, and I was aware of what they did, and I thought what they did was great, and I thought the people in the team were great because I knew them all as individuals. But and at one- but I was asked to do a bit of work with them, and when I kind of unpicked a lot of what was going on there, what I came to understand was that they actually just felt like the work they were doing just wasn't being recognized or being acknowledged, and a little bit of appreciation, and things turned around dramatically. I just think it's such an important thing that sometimes we miss, and it's such an easy thing to do, just to
yeah,
say thank you. you know
yeah. And such, I've heard it a few times as well about, people really need they need that recognition to get that engagement. To
hmm
It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then you get more out of it. People are more willing to put more effort in.
100%, yeah, absolutely.
Can I ask you, like, some of those? I think some of those ideas are really fantastic, and I've experienced them in some teams I've worked with. I think that psychological safety piece is so key, where you're not afraid to,
hmm
come out with an idea that you, even if it's not a great idea, you'll give it a go. This makes a huge difference. But there must be some massive challenges in kind of implementing those structures into a team. What do you see? What are some of the biggest challenges you've come across in terms of building teams for high performance?
I think hierarchy is the death of success. Don't,
Wow,
yeah,
wow,
I do. Um, I think if you're, and I mean, look, everybody has to do their job. and ultimately, I suppose somebody's name has to sign on the dotted line. But I feel if you're working in a team and it's very, very hierarchical to the point where people are afraid, I suppose, to make ideas or afraid to have suggestions, to make suggestions, I think that it's impossible to be successful.
Mm.
Um, because if you tell people that all they can do is sit in the corner and do their job, that's then all they will do. And
Right.
um, now I declaring my interest. I suppose my dad was self-employed my whole life. He had shops in town, and a couple of them, and I was behind the counter of a shop from the time that I was 7. And the expression "it's not my job." I mean, we were just never in a million years allowed to utter the expression "it's not my job,"
Right.
because like regardless of who you were or what you were doing, like if the bins needed to be changed, the bins needed to be changed. So off you go and do it. And
Yeah.
it's not my job just didn't cut it. And I suppose I've come up my whole life with that attitude that all hands on deck, you all row in, everybody has their part to play, and everybody's part is as important as everybody else's.
Yeah.
And it's something that I really, really believe. So probably from my own style, it's probably a challenge for me if I have people then that I feel aren't like-minded, who don't think the same way. But personally, I feel that if you have this idea that we're all part of a team, we're working together to achieve a common with a common purpose to achieve an outcome, and we're all clear on what that is. I
Yeah.
think that's a really, really powerful thing. I think if
Okay.
you have the opposite and somebody is locked into a, well, that's not my job mindset, be it by themselves or by the environment and the system that they're in at the time, I just think that's not a positive place to be for anybody.
Yeah, yeah, very challenging. I love that. I love that idea as well of people getting behind a common purpose, like a
Yeah,
higher goal. It's not
yeah.
just about kind of what you're doing. It's a team effort. It's
But
everybody's.
are you clear on why we're here?
Mm,
And like what are we doing? And if you're clear on why we're here, then you can work towards the outcome that you want. But if everybody's just paddling their own canoe,
yeah,
sure, that's not going to get you anywhere.
yeah. And what about, we're in the era of remote. I mean, a lot of people have been used to remote work for a long time, I think, but more so than ever now. I mean, the majority of the workforce that used to be sitting in an office is now, working from home. Of course, there are people, still working where they need to be. I mean, certainly in healthcare and in retail, there's a lot of people that we absolutely need out there so society can keep going. But for a lot of the corporate world, it's very much in the remote era now. Do you think that's had an impact on leadership and an impact on how we build high performance teams? Are there any changes? Are there, like, is it fundamentally the same, or do we need to see more changes to make it work?
I think we need to see some more changes, but I think the problem that we have is that it was a bit of a baptism of fire. Everybody on the 12th, so unless you were working for an organization like Apple and Microsoft, who had a largely remote team previous to the 12th of March, as it was in Ireland at the time, um, yes, we were familiar with the concepts of remote working. Everybody, well, anybody who had the option to work flexibly was working a day or two a week at home, but we were still very conscious or very comfortable in the office environment, and knew that we, or thought that we all needed to be together in order to get anything delivered. And I think that it's very, very challenging is the first thing that I would say. I think
Yeah,
that the at the core of leading a team and at the core of building a successful team, is probably the communication stuff that goes on around the edges. Organizations where there's a lot of meetings, where the 5 minutes before a meeting formally starts, or the 5 minutes after the meeting ends, where you get to walk away and have that sidebar. Sometimes they're the most valuable part. of it. And I know
Yeah.
that a piece of work that we had previously done was around trying to make sure that, you were including people who were dialing into meetings remotely, and so that you weren't excluding anybody from the conversation. But then earlier this year, everybody got, I suppose, thrown off a cliff, and suddenly we were all working from home. And
Yeah.
how do you build on that? And I feel like the importance of communication can't be understated. And I think that it has to be both formal and informal. So I
Yeah.
think that you have, um, you know, obviously things like regular team meetings, and clear goals and clear purpose and agendas to those meetings, so that everybody's very sure what they're doing when they show up. But like I like one of the things that I've done myself with my own team is I've just put in a brief 15-minute call every morning. That's like, hey, how are you? How are you getting on? What are your top three things to get done today? These are my top three things to get done. And then we all go off. But in the course of those 15-minute conversations, it comes up that, somebody I was going to say somebody went for dinner in a nice place the weekend, but can't even do that at the moment. But you have those brief conversations that keep you connected. Then you have an understanding of exactly what somebody's working on for the day,
Yeah.
and then the next day you can check in, and and it's really not about keeping tabs on somebody. It's very much about understanding that, particularly in the current environment that we're working in, life is getting in the way a lot, and there's a lot of noise out there, and the psychological impact of what we're going through at the moment, it's a very challenging time for everybody. And I
Yeah.
think that staying connected, staying close to people, it's just more important than it ever was, because you're
Yeah.
not seeing them. Like, you're not, and how somebody shows up on a video call, it's not the same thing as if you're sitting next to somebody or in the same, space as somebody for 8 hours a day, and you get a sense of, oh God, they're a bit off.
Yeah.
Like, anybody can put on a face for 15, 20 minutes on a video call. You really need to try and just stay close to people, so that you can sense what's going on, and if they need support, that you're there to give it to them.
Yeah. 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 That's actually, it's interesting what you're saying. 'Cause, like, I guess I've worked in an environment where there has been a lot of remote working, and I've been kind of used to it. But I probably haven't paid as much attention to people who really, they've never done
Mm.
remote working in the past, and it is entirely new. Um, Really interesting around the video calls as well. Speaking with a couple of people, I seem to be on video calls all the time, which is, it's, even though I'm used to remote working, I definitely haven't been on video calls as much as I am now. It's
Yeah.
relentless.
And it's
Um,
draining, it's tiring, it's because it's that, I suppose, it ties into what I've just said about putting your best foot forward for 15 or 20 minutes a day. But there's
yeah,
suddenly a succession of blocks of time where you have to bring your A game.
yeah,
And you get to the end of the day and you're just like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah,
tired of being my best self. Can I just be exhausted in the corner for a little while?
yeah, yeah. There's in terms that, so the technology piece I find really interesting as well. I mean, that there's it's, I haven't heard, I don't think I've heard anyone say Zoom fatigue yet. Maybe I have, and I'm using that phrase because I've heard it previously, but I'm kind of fascinated with how we're using digital technologies to make it work. And it seems, for the most part, like things like Zoom, and the quality of video, and like you can see people's, like you can see my hand movements here, you can see
Hmm.
some body movements, which kind of tells you a lot. But I just wonder, what do you think in terms of technologies? Is there more that we could be using? Are we using them effectively in this kind of new era? Is there something else we need?
I think we need the right to disconnect and the power to switch off. And I'm not just talking about the power to switch off your video. I think that we need to be aware that um, it's a very, how can I put it? We are now getting a real insight into people's personal lives at a level that we never did before.
Yes.
And um, so I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, and my 8-year-old recently joined me on a call with the senior management team and our CIO. and and, I, and I'm, and that's fine, and
Yeah.
it is genuinely fine, and it's taken to be fine, because I'm conscious that I work for an organization where we have very much embraced the fact that this is a huge change for people. But I'm also conscious of how lucky I am that I have space. I have a private office space within my own home.
Yeah.
And so when my 8-year-old photobombs or Zoom bombs me or whatever, it's a rare occurrence because the door is
Right.
closed and she knows she's not supposed to come in. But people are working in, but not everybody is in the same situation. People are working on their knees and sitting in the bed. People are on the kitchen tables. People are in shared environments. And I
Yeah.
think that I think that now I do think we're settling a little bit, and I think that we're getting more comfortable with the idea that we shouldn't be blocking out people's calendars solidly during the day and things like that. But what I do think from a leadership perspective and from the perspective of trying to build and maintain a high performing team is that we really need to be very cognizant of the fact that it's not the same as it was 6 or 7 months ago now,
Yeah.
and that there are additional challenges, and we are able to see directly into somebody's home, and we need to be respectful of that. you
Yeah.
know um
Yeah.
Somebody told me a story recently where he had changed something in his environment, and um I didn't comment on the change, but I commented specifically on something that was behind him, and he said that he had done it because people were constantly commenting on what was behind him, and
All
he
right.
felt that it was intrusive, basically, and
Whoa.
that
Yeah.
and I think that we need to be aware that we need to be respectful of people's environment and people's workspace, but also of their time,
Yeah.
and not um, expect that people will just sit at a desk at 8 or 9 or whatever time in the morning and not move for the rest of the day and be that best self for the entire time. That it is tiring, that it is a different experience, and that we miss people. I think there's a point about saying that as well, that
Yeah.
we miss the banter or the bit of crack that you have from being in an office social environment.
That's like firstly, that's so I'd never have thought of that. That's so insightful in terms of you really are looking like you're looking into people's homes,
Mm,
their castle, their kind of private sanctuary. And I guess like yourself, I'm lucky I have a space here that's kind of cordoned off, if you like. I still get photobombed or Zoom bombed like yourself. But and I have to say I've loved that element of it as well. It's
mhm.
this kind of there's a real human connection with people that I would never have had that before, and that's lovely. But I hadn't considered how intrusive people might find it, which is really interesting, and it makes total sense when you've explained it out like that. Um, do you have you kind of in terms of managing this remote work and this kind of digital way we're living at the moment? Do you have kind of a few things that you do to help you manage it effectively throughout the day? Like as an example, I know one John Dolan, a guy I was speaking with recently, we did a fabulous session, and John was telling me that he builds in breaks to just get up and move away from the computer and take a walk or go for a run or whatever it is, and it makes such a difference in his day. Are there things that you would do to
One of the
help
big
keep you
things,
sane, I guess?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. One of the big things that I'm doing at the moment is, and I think that we've been reasonably lucky with the weather, but if I have a meeting where there's no need to share screens, so if I don't need to present something or something's not being presented, if we're not sharing screens, I walk. So I dial into the call, and I go for a walk.
Mm,
And um, obviously not with any meeting that's very formal or anything like that, but um, I just think it's magic. So much so that there are a couple of sessions that our team run with some regularity, and part of what we're going to be doing now is encouraging everybody who joins those sessions to walk while they're joining them. So instead of just
yeah.
sitting at a computer watching the screen, that they walk and just get a bit of air. Um, we have a very good understanding as well of the fact that people are working in different circumstances at the moment. So we have a very strong flexible working policy in AIB,
Yeah.
and it's very much about understanding for the most part, because obviously there are people that are in customer facing roles and it is more challenging for them, but for anybody who can almost set their own time scale that they're able to then say, okay, well, it suits me to work at this time, or it suits me to take a 2-hour chunk of time in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And we are really encouraging people to do that. But
Yeah.
personally, I find walking meetings just, it's great, because apart from anything else, you're not, the little things that you used to do when you were in the office, whether it was getting up to go for a coffee or grabbing somebody for a quick chat, those casual moments where you were moving without even realizing it, they're all lost. You
Yeah.
could potentially sit at your desk all day and just calcify.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so get up and move. That would be my, so I get up and move as much as I possibly can. That's my big thing.
That's a really good tip. That's a really good tip. I'm going to do that more often. I try to do it myself, but maybe I need to even put a slot in my diary to say, get up. My watch tells me to stand up every now and then. So
Yeah, and that's terrifying when you have to be reminded, when you have to be reminded by artificial intelligence that perhaps you should move.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I know.
Jean, this has been really, really insightful. It's been fantastic talking to you. I got some great nuggets of information there, and I'm sure anyone else watching this will have got the same. Thank you so, so much for coming on today to speak with me.
No worries at all. Thanks a million, Darragh.